The Cleveland Browns training camp was supposed to be about refining schemes, evaluating rookies, and building momentum toward the regular season. Instead, it became ground zero for one of the most explosive cultural confrontations the NFL has seen in years. At the center of it all, Shedeur Sanders, rookie quarterback, fifth-round pick, son of NFL royalty, and the epicenter of a generational clash that has ignited conversations far beyond the locker room. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. It all started subtly, a few side eyes and drills, veterans whispering behind closed doors. But the tension didn't take long to boil over. When Sanders, unfazed by hierarchy and tradition, began calling audibles with authority and commanding teammates like a seasoned vet, the veterans didn't just take notice, they took offense. To them, Sanders hadn't paid his dues. He hadn't earned the right to speak that confidently in team meetings or call out errors during walkthroughs. He wasn't supposed to lead. He was supposed to follow. But that's never been Shedeur Sanders' style. From the moment he arrived in Cleveland, Shedeur walked with a poise that unnerved some and inspired others. He wasn't arrogant. He was assertive, not disrespectful, but unapologetically direct. He carried the air of someone who wasn't just hoping to make the team, but planning to take over. That mindset rubbed some veterans the wrong way. The breaking point came during a red zone scrimmage. After threading a touchdown pass through double coverage, Shedeur turned to the sidelines and shouted, "This is my offense now." Loud enough for everyone to hear. For one veteran defensive back, it was too much. Words were exchanged. Helmets were thrown. Coaches had to separate players. Rich Eisen, watching footage from practice, later said, "I've covered this league for 2 decades. I've never seen anything like that from a rookie." What made the moment more shocking was not just the outburst, but who sided with Sanders. Several younger players, second- and third-year athletes who had grown up watching Shedeur's college highlights and admired his authenticity, stood behind him. One offensive lineman reportedly told coaches, "We're not mad. We just wish someone had said it sooner." For them, Shedeur's confidence wasn't insubordination. It was leadership. Veterans, however, saw it differently. To them, Sanders had skipped crucial steps. They believed respect in the NFL locker room isn't given. It's earned slowly, one grueling practice at a time. And in their eyes, no number of viral clips or jersey sales could replace that process. The divide wasn't just generational. It was philosophical. On one side stood tradition, the unwritten rules that dictate rookie behavior, deference, silence until spoken to. On the other stood Shedeur Sanders, representing a new era of athletes who believe in speaking truth to hierarchy, who see respect as a two-way street, not a one-way ritual. The coaching staff found themselves stuck in the middle. Kevin Stefanski, known for his calm demeanor, tried to mediate behind the scenes. Some assistants urged him to rein in Shedeur's bravado, fearing locker room resentment. Others argued that the team had finally found a quarterback with the charisma to lead, a rare find worth nurturing, not muting. Team captains called a closed-door meeting. What was said inside remains private. But reports suggest that Sanders was given a platform to explain himself. And rather than backpedal or offer forced apologies, he doubled down. "I'm not trying to skip the line," Sanders reportedly told the room. "I've been in the fire my whole life. Every snap I take, every throw I make, it comes with pressure most of y'all have never known. I'm not here to disrespect you. I'm here to lead us. Whether you like it or not, I'm built for this." The room fell silent. For some, that speech was a turning point. Veteran linebacker and team leader Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah later told reporters, "He's got a different kind of confidence." At first, yeah, it caught us off guard. But when someone backs it up with how he performs every day, you can't ignore that. Still, not everyone was convinced. A few veterans quietly approached management, asking whether this rookie was being handed too much too soon. They cited potential fractures in the locker room. They warned that letting Sanders continue unchecked might lead to deeper resentment down the line. But the front office had seen enough. They'd watched the film, seen the practices, read the data. And most importantly, they'd seen the results. The offense moved better with Shedeur. Players responded to him. Energy was up, completions were higher, drives were more efficient. Even those resistant to change started to waver. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, initially skeptical, began running extra routes with Sanders after practice. Their chemistry improved. The trust grew. And by the time the second preseason game rolled around, Sanders was working with the first team, not by accident, but by design. Social media caught fire. QB one incoming trended on Twitter. Videos of Shedeur's practice speeches went viral. Clips of him dapping up fans in the bleachers were everywhere. But beneath the media storm, a real transformation was happening inside the Brown facility. This was no longer a case of a cocky rookie making noise. This was a quarterback shifting the identity of an entire team. And it didn't stop on the field. Off the turf, Sanders began organizing film sessions with skilled players. He led chalk talks on Zoom. He even brought in former teammates from Colorado to run private drills on the weekend. No cameras, no press, just work. Work that everyone noticed. Even the vets who once doubted him. In one of the more surreal moments of camp, a veteran cornerback who had clashed with Sanders early on was overheard saying, "Damn, I thought he was just a name. He might actually be the truth." That's when everything changed. Sanders wasn't just winning over teammates. He was forcing a cultural evolution. The Browns, a franchise historically defined by quarterback chaos, sudden collapses, and identity crises, found themselves with something they hadn't had in decades, a galvanizing leader under center. And the irony? He was the least expected, most doubted player on the roster. But for Sanders, this wasn't vindication. It was validation. From Jackson State to Colorado to Cleveland, he'd walked a path few understood, a path paved not by handouts but by hardship, by scrutiny, by being Deion's son, and trying to prove he was more than a shadow, by hearing no from scouts, not ready from analysts, and too bold from coaches. And through it all, he kept moving, kept throwing, kept believing. So when the dust settled and the locker room quieted, the question was no longer, should Shedeur Sanders lead this team? It was, how far can he take them? Because in the span of a few weeks, Shedeur Sanders had done what most rookies never dared attempt. He challenged the rules. He faced a storm. He took the heat and didn't blink. And in doing so, he didn't just demand respect. He earned it. By week 3 of training camp, the dynamic around Shedeur Sanders had fundamentally shifted. No longer viewed as a brash rookie forcing his voice into veteran conversations, he was now being recognized as the voice the locker room didn't know it needed. Players who once challenged him during drills were now nodding when he made a call. Veterans who scoffed at his early assertiveness began staying late to review film with him. And quietly, behind closed doors, the team's leaders began considering what kind of culture they wanted moving forward, and whether Shedeur's version of leadership might be the blueprint. But the transformation didn't come without turbulence. Shedeur's refusal to follow traditional protocols wasn't just a rejection of hazing or hierarchy. It was a broader statement about what it means to be prepared. He came into the league not to learn how to lead, but to lead. That kind of self-possession rattled people. It was a declaration that experience, while important, didn't automatically earn someone authority, especially when performance didn't back it up. Sanders wasn't interested in fitting in. He was interested in winning. That mentality bled into everything, from how he conducted himself in meetings to how he demanded accountability from teammates. When a wide receiver missed a read during a 2-minute drill, Sanders didn't shy away from correcting him, even if that player was on his 3rd contract. When the offensive line allowed a sack during a scrimmage, Sanders calmly addressed protections, not with blame, but with directness. Some found it refreshing. Others found it offensive. But no one found it forgettable. Meanwhile, the coaching staff had no choice but to reevaluate their structure. Sanders was rewriting expectations on the fly, and ignoring his influence was no longer an option. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, who initially planned to bring Shedeur along slowly, began scripting first-team reps specifically around Sanders' strengths, his timing accuracy, and pre-snap reads. The offense began to hum in ways it hadn't in years. In one particularly telling moment during a full-contact scrimmage, the Browns' offense faced a 4th and 4 from midfield. The call from the sideline was a conservative draw play. Sanders, seeing a coverage mismatch, audibled into a slant-flat concept, risky for a rookie without approval. The result? A 17-yard gain and a sideline eruption. After the play, Stefanski approached Sanders and said, "You saw it. You trusted it. Good call." That kind of affirmation wasn't handed out lightly, but it was clear that trust in Shedeur was building, and not just among the coaches. Ownership took notice too. Haslam, who had publicly praised Sanders' jersey sales and off-field marketability, began quietly asking for updates on his development. Behind closed doors, there were discussions about how to handle the quarterback room. The team's high-priced veterans, brought in as safer options, were now looking more like contingency plans than centerpieces. Media narratives began to shift as well. What started as headlines mocking the prime-time privilege of Deion's son quickly turned into segments asking whether Browns had found their franchise quarterback without even knowing it. ESPN's Ryan Clark remarked, "We talk so much about intangibles, about that factor. Shedeur has it, and you can't coach that. You can't fake that." In Cleveland, billboard began to appear featuring Sanders' face with a tagline, "Built different." He didn't request them. He didn't promote them. But he didn't shy away either, because Shedeur understood the moment, and he wasn't just riding the wave, he was steering it. Still, tension hadn't vanished. Some veterans remained skeptical. In a league where windows are short and careers shorter, the fear wasn't just about a rookie overstepping. It was about losing influence, losing roles, losing relevance. And Shedeur's rise was accelerating those fears. By preseason Game 1, all eyes were on him. The stadium, half full during typical exhibitions, was packed. Fans wearing QB1 shirts crowded the lower bowl. Kids held up signs reading, "Shedeur is him." This was more than a debut. It was a moment. First drive, first snap under center. The defense showed blitz. Shedeur checked the play, his slant for 8 yards. Next play, a read option he executed flawlessly, picking up 12 more. Then came a back shoulder fade down the right sideline that landed perfectly in stride. The stadium erupted. By the end of the night, Sanders was 13 for 15 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. More than stats, it was a control, the vision, the decisiveness. The way he carried the huddle like a veteran. The way he celebrated with teammates, not as a star, but as a peer. After the game, reporters flooded the locker room. One asked how he stayed so calm under pressure. Sanders smiled. "Pressure? I've been under pressure since I was 9 years old. Playing this game isn't pressure. It's a privilege." That soundbite went viral. But while social media buzzed, something quieter and more powerful was happening inside the building. Buy-in. One by one, players who had once questioned Sanders' approach began reaching out to him. Film sessions got bigger. Locker room debates turned into strategy talks. Even the defensive unit, long the most skeptical, started acknowledging that practicing against Sanders was making them sharper. The turning point came in week 2 of preseason. The Browns were down by 6, with under 2 minutes left. Coaches considered pulling Sanders to avoid injury, but he waved them off. "I've got this," he said. He took the offense down the field with precision. Short throws, sideline outs, one read option scramble that left a linebacker grasping air. With 14 seconds left from the 18-yard line, he found a tight end on a corner route. Touchdown. Game 1. Team lifted. Sideline stormed the field. And Shedeur? He didn't celebrate like he'd proved anyone wrong. He simply nodded, hugged his offensive lineman, and walked to the tunnel, helmet in hand. That night, a veteran defensive end posted on Instagram, "I was wrong. He's the real deal. Respect." Respect. The thing everyone said Shedeur hadn't earned. The thing they said couldn't be demanded. It had to be given. Well, it had been. And not because he begged for it or waited years for it, but because he showed up every day, every drill, every rep, and made it impossible to ignore. Now, as the regular season loomed, the question had shifted from whether Shedeur Sanders would make the roster, or even start to what his ceiling truly was. Was he just a flash in the pan, a preseason sensation, or was he about to rewrite what it meant to be a rookie quarterback in the NFL? Inside team meetings, his voice carried the same weight as veterans. Game plans were built around his strengths. Even the defensive coordinator admitted in a presser that he makes us better just by how we have to prepare against him. And then came the endorsement that cemented it all. Deion Sanders, visiting camp in a private moment, hugged his son after practice. A reporter asked what he thought about Shedeur's progress. Deion paused, smiled, and said, "I taught him the game, but the man he's become, that's all him." With that, the torch was fully passed. And now, Cleveland had a leader, one they hadn't planned for, hadn't expected, and couldn't stop believing in. Shedeur Sanders hadn't just survived training camp. He'd conquered it, and the NFL was officially on notice. By the time week 1 arrived, there was no more debate. Shedeur Sanders would start under center for the Cleveland Browns. The decision was no longer based on potential. It was based on results. In every measurable category, completion percentage, red zone efficiency, third down conversions, and even practice leadership evaluations, Shedeur wasn't just competing with the veterans. He was outpacing them. But beyond the metrics, something intangible had taken root. The locker room, once divided, now pulsed with a quiet confidence, a collective belief that this new chapter might be different. Not just because of Shedeur's arm talent, but because of the way he brought people together without pandering. His presence had shifted the tone of the team from cautious to curious. Curious about just how far this group could go under his command. The morning of the opener, Shedeur arrived at the stadium 4 hours early, headphones on, calm and focused. There was no Instagram story, no flash, just game film, soft steps down the tunnel, and a football in his hand. He threw passes alone in the early light. Shadow routes to invisible receivers, building rhythm like a violinist warming up before a concert. As kickoff neared, television crews flooded the field, camera lenses tracking his every move. Commentators speculated. Could a rookie truly carry the weight of a cursed franchise? Could he live up to the soaring expectations birthed in preseason? In the tunnel, as the team huddled before taking the field, Shedeur stood at the center, not barking, not gesturing wildly, but steady. He looked every man in the eye and said, "You've got my trust. All I ask is yours." It wasn't a speech. It was a pact. The game began with fireworks. The Browns received the opening kickoff, and on the first play from scrimmage, Shedeur connected with his tight and over the middle for a 17-yard gain. The throw was quick, decisive, and perfectly placed between two defenders. It wasn't flashy, it was clinical. The next play, a design bootleg, found a wide receiver streaking across the field. Another completion, another first down, but the drive stalled inside the 30. A misassignment led to a sack, and a false start pushed the team back. The Browns settled for a field goal. On the sideline, Shedeur gathered his offense, not to scold but to reset. "Next one's a touchdown," he said. And he meant it. When the Browns got the ball back, Sanders led an 82-yard drive that showcased every piece of his skill set. He escaped pressure with pocket movement that reminded observers of seasoned quarterbacks. He delivered throws on the run. He identified blitzes and adjusted protections. And then, with the defense pressing at the goal line, he checked into a corner fade and dropped the ball perfectly over the shoulder of his receiver for 6. Touchdown! Fans erupted. The team erupted. But Shedeur? He jogged back to the sideline, fist bumped his offensive line, and studied the tablet. Always on to the next play. By halftime, he had thrown for 162 yards and 2 scores. The Browns led 17-10, and the national narrative was shifting. No longer framed as Shedeur versus the spotlight. It was now Shedeur belongs. In the third quarter, adversity finally arrived. On a 3rd and long, a miscommunication led to an interception, his first mistake under the lights. The stadium quieted. Cameras zoomed in. Would the rookie unravel? But Sanders didn't flinch. On the sideline, he owned the error. "That's on me," he told his receiver. "We'll get it back." True to his word, on the next drive, he orchestrated a 10-play, 74-yard masterpiece. He hit slants, outs, a back shoulder comeback, and capped it off with a quarterback draw that he took into the end zone himself, lowering his shoulder at the goal line to finish the run. The sideline mobbed him. Defensive players who once questioned his leadership met him with chest bumps and howls of celebration. One even joked, "You're not just a QB. You're our dog now." The game ended with a Browns win, 31-24. Sanders finished with 297 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 72% completion rate. But more importantly, the team had an identity. They were no longer defined by decades of instability at quarterback. They had their guy. Post-game interviews were a blur. Reporters asked about the moment, the pressure, the crowd, the family legacy. But Shedeur kept the focus on his teammates. They made plays. They made this possible. I just did my job. Still, the media frenzy didn't die down. National outlets declared it the best debut by a Browns quarterback since Otto Graham. Others began openly questioning how Sanders had fallen so far in the draft. Critics turned apologists. Skeptics turned believers. Back at team facilities the following week, Shedeur showed up at 6 a.m. long before meetings started. He lifted with the linemen, studied film with his offensive coordinator, and walked through red zone reads with rookies on the practice squad. He wasn't playing the part. He was living it, and the league was watching. The answers were unfolding with each snap, each read, each quietly confident huddle break. And somewhere in a film room, past midnight, Shedeur Sanders was already watching tape, looking for the edge, finding the gaps, preparing not for praise, but for progress. Because in his mind, this wasn't Cinderella's story. This was just the beginning.